Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be for a very special collab review here. I am going to be reviewing Fuller House, but I'm not going to be reviewing it alone, and that is because every single episode that I watch of the show, I watch with none other than this man right here, the Tiger Dude himself, Tony Estrada. Tony, how are you?
What's that? No, I'm just joking. Hey, what's up, you guys? This is Tony from my channel, 22TigerDude. And I want to thank Kevin because we're going to be reviewing a certain season of a show that I know he's going to bring up right now.
And of course, that season is none other than season 2 of Fuller House. Yes, we watched every single episode together. So I feel like it would only be fair if I let him be on my channel. I know that he's going to be doing his own review, but I felt like this would be kind of fun. You know, you get my point, you get his viewpoint, and we're not talking about something that we absolutely despise for once. So this is actually a good thing. He's not
Greasy Strangler. He's referring to Greasy Strangler.
Of course, I actually really like Fuller House, as you guys know. I really loved the first season. I thought it was a really well done first season overall. I thought there was definitely some campy shit in there and some stuff that was only there to appeal nostalgia and things like that. But I was very much looking forward to this season, and I have to say that as good as season 1 was, season 2, in my opinion, was just that much better. I think it had twice the laughs, twice the story. It had more focus with the characters. I felt like it had more of an idea of what it wanted to do. And in my opinion, the show finally found its footing this season. But before we get into it, Tony, what are your overall thoughts on season 2?
Season 2, I actually think is a really great season. And I liked season 1. If you guys saw my season 1 review I did on my 22TigerDude channel, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10, which is a very solid B. I thought it was just a very enjoyable season. Even though I liked season 1, I think season 2 fully embrace the Full House vibe a little more, but except, you know, it still stood on its own as its own show.
So since this is my channel, I'm going to talk about all the things that happened. Tony will give his thoughts, and we'll kind of do it that way. So we're going to go plot by plot, as I usually do. Let's first talk about DJ, because I know a lot of people do not enjoy DJ, but I thought they gave her a lot of stuff to do this season. She did a good job of focusing more on her plots and focusing on, you know, what's going on with her. And that's something I thought they did a very good job with this, with all the characters this season. They really did give everyone something to do, and I really did appreciate that. But DJ specifically, as we know, at the end of last season, we ended on quite the cliffhanger where DJ was at a crossroads. You know, there was Matt, there was Steve, and she really didn't know which one to choose. Now, as I said in season 1, I'm not the hugest fan of this. I really feel like, you know, she just lost her husband and, you know, a couple months ago, and now randomly, now she's thinking now's the time to get with someone. It just feels we're kind of rushed the way they did that, but I was on board with the direction they took this season, and I'm overall happy with where they took it, because immediately she's about to choose between Matt and Steve. She's going to tell them which one she chooses, but unfortunately, we find out that not only are Matt and Steve now buddy-buddy, which is a great twist that I absolutely love, because I'd much rather see these two as friends than seeing them at each other's throats. I just feel like it's a lot more entertaining to watch them as friends. But they also have girlfriends. Matt has, I believe her name was Crystal, if I'm not mistaken, who really hot, definitely, really hot. And on the show, not enough. I mean, she was definitely very hot. And then Steve, believe it or not, has CJ, who basically is DJ 2.0, just not nearly as interesting as DJ. And Tony, what did you think of these two girlfriends overall?
The CJ character, I actually thought was actually pretty interesting. I actually didn't really mind her. But the other one, like what you said, I believe the name is Crystal. She was just kind of there. Like what Kevin said, she's good looking, but I hate to say it, I felt like that's all she was there for, just to be your perky, good-looking, hey, look at me, I'm hot. I know, Kevin, you were bummed because she's good-looking, but once she stopped showing up in season 2, I wasn't too bummed out, to be honest.
Yeah, it didn't really change that much. I will definitely say, though, that what I liked about these two girls is that I wasn't on board with this at first. I thought, oh, this is just dragging it out more. But what I liked about it is that, one, it gave Matt and Steve something other to do than just be DJ's love interest. You know, they were now her friends. They were there for her if she needed something. Sometimes they stopped by. I thought they did a pretty good job with that. But their girlfriends were also really nice. Like, they weren't at DJ's throat. They weren't jealous of her. They weren't against her. They were nice overall. I will definitely say that Crystal was kind of just there to be Matt's girlfriend and be, like, really into exercise and things like that. They didn't really do much besides that. Someone who, you know, is trying to set up DJ on all these different dates and things like that, who has this really, really weird father who we're going to get into. And then CJ, though, I like the direction they took with CJ for the most part until we got to the end of the season. Then I thought they made her way too kind of dramatic and way too predictable, the direction they took her at the end of the season, but we'll get into that. But anyways, they have these two girlfriends, and things are going pretty well. We see, they're bonding and everything. DJ's obviously a little bit jealous because she's very third wheel, or I guess you could say fifth wheel, because, they have their girlfriends and she doesn't. She's all alone. So Crystal decides that she's going to try to set her up with someone, and she sets her up with none other than her father, who actually was played by, I guess now, the late Alan Thicke. And what did you think of quite a very unusual performance from Alan Thicke for his last performance, actually?
Rest in peace, rest in peace to Alan Thicke. He will be missed. But, for the cameo that he had, I believe it was episode 2 or episode 3 of the season. Yeah. I know you felt uncomfortable, and I was uncomfortable, but it was one of those awkward. It was one of those funny kind of awkward, though. Like, I was awkward, but I also found it pretty amusing. But the way he would just say Mike here, like, he does say that line a lot, but it still ended up being pretty amusing for every time he would say it. Rest in peace to Alan Thicke, but he was actually really good for what he had in episode 2 or 3.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie that the scene at first I found really creepy and just really weird overall. This guy just randomly saying Mike here and her being set up with an older guy. I mean, it's funny, but as I thought about it, that's some of the really good comedy the show does. Really awkward moments with guys. If you laugh at that scene, you'll probably laugh at most of the season, because the comedy is pretty much on that level. And it honestly is probably one of the funniest scenes the show has done looking back at it. I mean, her being paired up with this guy, him saying Mike here, that to me was the plumber joke of the season. You guys remember there was this scene where she thought that it was the plumber, but it was actually this guy who she was being set up with. He kept saying all these suggestive things to him. That very much reminded me of that scene, and that scene I thought was the funniest scene of season 1, and this is definitely one of the funniest scenes of season 2. I thought they did a really good job with that overall. But anyways, enough of that scene. Very sad to see Alan Thicke die and everything, but I thought it was, I guess, a good last performance, even though it was literally in one scene. But either way, obviously, that date does not really go well, to say the least. DJ's obviously very weirded out. She's not going to pick some 50-year-old. I don't even think he's 50. I think he's like 80 or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. But either way, he goes off, and then we kind of have a little bit of a standstill with this plot. And here's my main flaw with this plot, is that while I do think they did a good job of having this plot permeate throughout the season, it's very after episode 2. Sometimes we'll hear about it, and then sometimes they'll completely forget about Matt or Steve, who are supposed to be main characters. If you guys don't believe me, there is an article that they, in fact, were upgraded to main characters. And Matt, I definitely can see. Steve, not so much. They really don't give Steve that much to do. I'd say they give him equal amount to do as they did last year, really. They definitely give him more stuff in the second half of the season, but the first half, he's barely there unless they really need him, unless then other than that, he's really not there at all. But let's then get to episode 5, which is when Matt, you can tell, he's starting to get a little bit tired of Crystal. Just something about her. They're bonding and everything, and he's not really liking her. So randomly has a revelation at the end of season 2 that he not the end of season 2, the end of episode 5, that he breaks up with Crystal and randomly decides that I'm now going to be with, he now wants to be with DJ, and he wants to be with her. They actually start dating. And Tony, what did you think of what I thought was a very abrupt twist?
This season has been going like kind of twisty and turny, I guess you could say, even though you can't see it coming. Like, come on, Kevin. Like, I'm sure you had to have seen that coming when he broke up with Crystal, right? Like, I'm sure he's not
going to. I thought she was going to last a little bit longer. I definitely will say. I thought she was going to last like halfway through the season, but she didn't last that long.
Yeah, surprisingly. Like what we said, though, it doesn't really hurt the show really at all. But yeah, that was pretty abrupt, definitely. But I was also prepared for it, because even watching this season, I was all like, it was obvious. And that's the thing. They make it so obvious that Matt still has something for DJ. DJ still has something for Matt. But then she still has something for Steve. So it's definitely very, very obvious. And yeah, the way that did happen in episode 5, that did feel out of nowhere, to put it best.
Yeah, so overall, I like the direction they went with Matt, and at first I didn't like it, but it actually turned out to be a good thing because we get to see Matt and DJ as boyfriend and girlfriend, and I like them as a couple. I think that Matt really cares for the family, has this really cute dynamic with the kids. He's kind of like that father figure that they need, but also kind of like a mentor to them, and it was really sweet, honestly. It was this great episode where we'll get into it, where they all get sick, and we'll talk about that episode because that episode is pretty hilarious. But they all end up getting sick, and Matt has to take care of them, and it's just really sweet, you know, seeing him take care of the family and everything. I like seeing Matt more integrated into the story. I thought him and DJ worked really well together. You can definitely tell that this isn't going to last. Like, throughout the entire season, it feels like this is a temporary relationship. But what we got of it, I was definitely very happy about. It was one of those twists that I wasn't entirely 100% okay with. But as the season went on, I then thought it was okay. I thought they did a good job with that twist overall. And from there, Matt and DJ are together. You know, we got a little bit of arcs with them. They don't do a ton with them together. They're just kind of together throughout the season. It's not really until, I'd say, episode 10 where they really start to actually do stuff here. Because episode 10, it's DJ's birthday, and DJ, Stephanie, Kimmy, they want to get her tickets to see New Kids on the Block because on her dream board, one of her dreams was to see New Kids on the Block, and they get tickets, but they're actually counterfeit. So they try to literally bring New Kids on the Block to her, but at the same time, she subsequently has to go to the dentist because Max gave her a jewelry box, and not Matt, Max gave her a jewelry box, and she ends up cracking her crown because the jewelry box, the key was in the cake, which I have no idea why someone would do that. I mean, he's 8, so whatever, but I'm not entirely sure. But either way, she cracks her crown. She has to go to the hospital. New kids show up. DJ's not there, to make a long story short. She shows up. She's then like completely just like high on Novocaine. It's a pretty funny scene. So obviously that doesn't go well, and they don't get tickets. But then we see that Steve, he comes into the picture, and Steve gave DJ the great gift of the pillow person, which I love seeing the pillow person. Just little things like that really brighten my day, just seeing the pillow person again. I mean, I remember the pillow person from the first, like, I want to say 4 seasons is when we had it, and then just kind of went away after that. But it was cool to see the pillow person again that Steve got for her. Because, you know, this is always something that she really cherished and that he knew she really loved. They had a longer history together. While Matt, I believe, got her just tennis rackets, and one for himself and one for her. So, yeah, she's obviously happy about it, but he didn't really give her anything that's that meaningful. So you can tell throughout the season that Steve is the one that knows DJ better than Matt does. And that's understandable because they just have a longer history together. And they did a good job of getting us on board with getting Steve and DJ together. They did a pretty good job with that, I have to say. But then Steve does, I think, one of the most selfless things that he's ever done in this show, which I thought was a really nice moment, where basically he talks about how Matt knows this patient who has tickets, you know, who works at the arena, and he has tickets to New Kids on the Block and get them there for free. Turns out it's actually not Matt. It's actually Steve that knows the guy from being a podiatrist and things like that. There was a guy there who had toe fungus, and basically, he decided that because Matt didn't give DJ a great gift, this will give him a personal win. You know, this is a nice thing he'd do for them. And I thought it was a really sweet moment. But you can tell, like I said, this is really when you can tell that Steve just knows DJ better. And that New Kids on the Block episode is by far one of the highlights of the season, in my opinion. It was a lot of fun to watch, seeing the New Kids again. Kind of like a flashback to what they did with the Beach Boys in season 2 and 5, I believe, when they did that. I thought that was kind of cool. What did you think of that episode, the New Kids episode, Tony?
Very funny episode, in my opinion. Like what you said with that selfless act that Steve made, I thought that was actually very nice, how he did that. Obviously, he didn't have to do it, but I think, you know, season 1, whereas Steve and Matt were competing against DJ, this season was, you know, they became friends ever since what happened at the end of season 1, which I think is refreshing. I think it's nice that they're not really going back and forth with each other. Maybe they'll still do a little bit of competing, but nothing like season 1. But yeah, it was a very funny episode. Like you said, when DJ is not herself, to put lightly, like that scene when she's just rubbing the face and the chest was so funny. And then once she's actually herself again, they show her that video That was very funny, just her reaction. And then, of course, the ending of the episode when she actually goes up on stage and she's just dancing, having fun, That was actually really nice, too. So it was definitely one of the nicest DJs.
Yeah. So overall, I definitely did enjoy with that one. But then we get to episode 11, and that's really when we start to see this relationship really marinate between these two, because it's their high school reunion, and a ton of stuff happens that we're going to talk about when we get to, like, Kimmy and stuff like that. But the main stuff with DJ and Steve is basically DJ doesn't have a date because Matt, I believe, is in India, so she plans on going alone. She runs into Nelson and Viper, which shameless cameos, definitely. I thought they didn't really know what to do with them. They kind of just had them fight over her. They could have easily done a little bit more. In my opinion, they didn't really need to be there, especially Viper, because he didn't even go to their school. I thought it was kind of funny the way we saw that. I get why they were there. I just didn't really feel like they knew really what to do with them. I understood why they brought them back. I just felt like they could have done maybe just a little bit more with them. But Steve ends up rescuing her. He saves the day. And it's a really nice moment because we know that Steve and DJ, that was her longtime boyfriend. And they, she brings up the fact, why we break up? Why would I settle for these two? And that's something that no one really understood in Full House. Why did DJ and Steve really break up? Why couldn't they stay together? Why didn't they last till the end of, the show? It just didn't really make sense why they broke up, and we didn't really need Nelson and Viper. And the way they made them so irrelevant, I thought was really funny because I didn't really ever think much of Nelson and Viper. I didn't really care much for them. I found them both really annoying, honestly. So to have them do what they did with them there, I thought was definitely really funny. I definitely really enjoyed that overall. And I thought it was probably one of the funniest moments of that episode. But then we get to Steve, like I said, they really start shooting this episode. You see basically, she goes to Steve and everything, and they dance to their first song. And it's this really sweet moment where you can tell, okay, these two are going to be together. There's a little bit too much shoving down our throats of it, but overall, I like that they got these two together. I like that we saw the chemistry they had. And I'm sure for you, Tony, this was a really nice, nostalgic moment.
Oh, absolutely, man. Very, very nostalgic for me. Wait, by the way, are you hearing an echo from my microphone?
No, I'm not hearing that go.
Okay, let me just fix it very quick.
All right. Anyway, so basically that goes down.
Now it's a very nostalgic episode. Very good to see Nelson again. I know it's not the same actor. They actually use the actor House Sparks. And for those that don't know who House Sparks is, he was Davenport in the Disney XD show Rats. I say as far as casting Nelson, he kind of looked as alike as he could as far as Nelson goes.
A really good episode, definitely. But like I said, the one thing I think they did really well is a lot of people didn't like where Steve went in season 1. They thought he kind of became a loser. They thought that he was just a different character. If you didn't like Steve in season 1, you will definitely get on board with Steve in season 2. They did a really good job of fleshing out his character. They did a really good job of giving him really great stuff and just showing how much he cares about DJ. And I think they did that even better than they did in season 1. He didn't come across as stalkerish or as obsessive. Season 1, he came across as kind of desperate to me. In season 2, I just felt like she wanted it more, and I thought they did a pretty good job with that. So I overall definitely enjoyed that. We'll get more in that, but DJ's arc is definitely my least favorite of the 3 because there are definitely 3 significant plots going on all season, and I thought hers definitely was the weakest just because we don't really need the whole love triangle and things that I think you'll agree with me, Tony, is definitely the weakest arc of the season.
Yeah, the love triangle thing is something that still kind of gets to me. I will say, I still enjoy some of the moments with, Matt and Steve, but I do think this whole plot, it gets kind of tiring. Who's DJ going to be with? Is she going to be with Matt? Is she going to be with Steve? I hope they don't really drag it on for too long. Just want them to, do their own thing, not have it always be focused on who DJ wants.
That's pretty much everything that goes down in DJ's arc. Now let's get into by far my favorite aspect of the season, which, first of all, let's talk about one of the best decisions the show has ever made, which is to give more to Fernando, because you guys know that Fernando was a character who I started off thinking that he was annoying, thinking that this was someone that I wasn't going to like, but as the season went on, I saw his, devotion for Kimmy. I saw how much he loves her. I saw how funny he really is, and that has never been more clear in season 2, which is by far Fernando's best season yet. Fernando might actually be my favorite character because of how great he is in this season. basically Fernando is low on rent. He gets kicked out of his house, and he basically has to temporarily stay in their house for the rest of the season. And it's one of the best decisions I think they ever made. And I think you'll agree with me, Tony. Fernando, I think, just fit right in there, definitely.
Oh, hands down, man. I love Fernando. I'm glad that they made him a main character now in this season because, you know, you now see him in the opening credits. Because, you know, I know me and you agree on this for sure, Kevin. Season 1, it took a while to kind of get into his character, but you know, as season 1 went along, you actually start to grow on him. And in this season, oh, I am on Team Fernando, to be honest, because this character, I think he's the show stealer, to be honest, when it comes to comedy. Because when I think what some of the funniest moments in this season are, I think of Fernando.
Oh, yeah, he definitely has some of the big moments of the season, some definitely hilarious moments. I mean, there are some that were just great, and the incorporation of Fernando, he really did add so much to the show. They did a great job of showing that he's a race car driver and all that stuff like that. And his relation with Kimmy, I thought they did a really good job of showing their relationship. Yeah, it's one that maybe sometimes they don't see eye to eye because they're very different and things like that, but at the same time, they love each other, and they love each other because they're weird and because they're different and because they're so dramatic. And I just really enjoyed watching the relationship overall. My only thing is that Kimmy doesn't really have, I'd say, an arc this season. Like, she's there, but she doesn't really have a specific plot like she did in season 1. She definitely had more to do in season 1. And that's not really a problem because I thought overall watching Kimmy and Fernando worked pretty well. I didn't think we really needed much going on with her, but definitely making him a main character is one of the best decisions the show has made. I think it adds this really fun comic dynamic that we really didn't have in Full House. You know, a lot of people say the show tries to replicate Fuller House. I don't know about you, Tony, but I can't think of a Fernando in Full House. There really isn't a character like Fernando. Only Jesse really comes to mind, but I'd say Stephanie is the Jesse of Fuller House, really. So I don't really think it had like a Fernando in Fuller House. But overall, they did an incredible job with his character. I thought he was just so fun. The actor, to me, always seems like he's having the most fun. He seems like he's improvising a lot of his lines, and it was just a lot of fun to watch him. But enough about Fernando. Let's get to my favorite arc of the season, which by far has to do with Stephanie. Because as you guys know, my biggest flaw with season 1 is that Stephanie had 0 to nothing to do. They gave her some stuff with her being a DJ. Then they had her work with Kimmy. Then they had that revelation with her not being able to have children. But they never really gave her a arc. You know, she was just kind of there. She was the third character, if you will. And it kind of pissed me off that they did that. This season, not the case at all. I mean, she, I think, as much as DJ, I think her stuff is arguably much more interesting than DJ. And I really did love all the stuff they did with Stephanie. Definitely, I thought it was really well done. First of all, they've kind of ditched her being a DJ. They don't really talk about it this season. I'm assuming she doesn't really do that career anymore. Am I missing something, Tony? Is there a reason like why she's not a DJ anymore?
Well, you know, this season focuses more on her music career. I think because like you said, they don't really bring it up. My assumption is basically what your assumption is. Maybe she's just done with the DJ career and she's just ready to be a more serious musician.
Yeah, and I was happy to see that because I never really believed her as a DJ. I wanted to see her more as a singer. They had so many moments season 1 of her singing, and it's a really great decision. Basically, we see in the beginning of the season, she runs into this guy who walks into her backyard, who looks like Ashton Kutcher, who's not Ashton Kutcher. He actually is played by the dude who played Mingo on Switched at Birth, who I very much like the character. I thought it was a really well-done character overall, and it was cool to see him here. But it turns out that she kisses him right immediately, like when they meet, he kisses her, and it turns out he is none other than Jimmy Gibbler. Yes, I mean Kimmy Gibbler's younger brother, and what a fun dynamic this really was. I know a lot of people talked about how, oh, Kimmy never talked about him. You know, she talked about an older brother, never a younger brother. But I get the sense that maybe her younger brother just didn't have much to talk about. Maybe she didn't see him as much. I'm not really sure. I really like this relationship overall. At first, I thought that it was very rushed because at first, Stephanie obviously doesn't want it. You know, she's not really into it. He's a Gibbler. She's a Tanner. They don't really get along, obviously. And he's doing whatever he can to pine for her. In fact, you could very much compare it to Steve in season 1, where he's doing everything he can to try to be with Stephanie, even though he's not the smartest tool in the, you know, the sharpest tool in the shed, to say the least, definitely. But I loved watching him pine after Stephanie. I thought it was a lot of fun to watch. And then eventually, not eventually, actually, episode 2, he shows her that he actually is a photographer and that he's traveled all over the world and that he does freelance. And this is something that he really likes to do for his own benefits. And this is when she starts to see that, yeah, this is a guy that's actually very genuine, that he's not just a joke, that actually can take him seriously. And immediately they start dating in episode 2. And I'm not going to lie, Tony, I think you'll agree with me that this was a little bit rushed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, sure. Like, after the first few episodes, you get used to their whole dynamic and you do buy into their chemistry. Like, you definitely buy for sure that they like each other. But yeah, and I know they're playing it as a comedy, like the minute that Stephanie meets the brother of Kimmy Gibbler, that she kisses him. I know they play that for comedy, but yeah, it definitely did feel rushed. And then once Stephanie learned more about Jimmy, when they go inside his, I believe it's a trailer, an RV.
Yeah, she agrees to go on a date with him, but his idea of date is to have a date inside his trailer.
Yeah, and then Stephanie kisses him. I'm like, okay, yeah, that felt rushed right there. But then, after that, I was okay with it. But I could definitely agree, like, for the first 3 episodes, when it develops, yeah, there wasn't really enough time to really develop their romance.
Yeah, because they do, after this, like I said, this is just like Matt and DJ, where I think this was a really good decision to get Stephanie with someone because it gives her something to do this season. Season 1, she's just going from guy to guy. It's very similar to what they did with Jesse in season 2. Season 1, he didn't really have a steady girlfriend. And then season 2, Becky came on, and a lot of people are thinking the same thing is going to happen with Jimmy. And honestly, I could definitely see that happening. Am I saying Jimmy's Becky? No way. Jimmy and Becky are 2 completely different people. They're not at all the same person. Jimmy is so much more dumb and stupid and ridiculous. But honestly, I think he's as funny as Fernando in some points. I really thought that he was going to piss me off.
He really is the Kelso of this generation.
Yeah. Oh, that's definitely true. Like, he definitely is Kelso. They tried to make him as much like Kelso as possible. Not just the hair, just in general, he is like Kelso. And they did a pretty good job with that, honestly. But the direction they take Jimmy in, I very much like. Because at first, we see that Kimmy wants to try to get the band Girl Talk back together, which, of course, we know from season 4. Not season 4, season 8, I mean the last season. She tries to get the band back together. And needless to say, it doesn't really work out. Gia comes back. DJ and Gia do not see eye to eye at all. So they very quickly end that idea because it's not working out. And I thought it was fun to see Girl Talk come back. It was kind of pointless what they did, but I get why they did it. It was just like a nostalgia thing. So I thought it was pretty fun overall. And seeing those 2 clash was definitely a lot of fun. The fact she had a vape pen, it wasn't even smoke. I mean, I thought that was definitely pretty funny. But then it really does come to the actual start is when Stephanie starts writing this song called The Boy Next Door, which was a song that I constantly find myself singing ever since I listened to it. I constantly have it in my head. I'm constantly going back to that clip. Just a really great song overall. And Jodie Sweetin's actually a very talented singer. I'd really like to see her if the show, doesn't work out, which it is so far. But after this show, I'd love to see her do a music career, even as like a side project. I'd love to see her do a music career. I'd love to see her make a CD because she's a very talented singer. And I'm glad that they went in this direction with her. They're really appealing to her talents and utilizing, what she can do. I thought they did that really well. And Jimmy ends up putting it on YouTube. Needless to say, no one really likes it. They find them annoying. They find it to be really cheesy and cringy and things like that. And it is kind of cringy. So I'm not going to lie. The video they put up was pretty cringy. I don't know why they thought that that was going to be good because it was pretty cringy. Even Kimmy says that they're annoying. They decided to replace it with Tommy and Cosmo, which I thought was really cute. Definitely seeing those 2. Definitely the baby and the dog are just a lot of fun to watch. And basically from there, it actually becomes this huge hit. Everyone's loving it. It's getting all these views and things like that. Everyone has loving the song. And before she knows it, she's now performing on Wake Up USA. And I thought it was just a really great decision to do this music career. I think you will agree, Tony, that this really is a much better story for Stephanie than anything in season 1.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I think season one was just more of a fresh start for Stephanie. I think that's why she didn't have maybe as much of an arc that season.
Yeah.
But it's definitely nice that this season fleshed out her arc definitely more. Like you said, you know, we got to see Gia again, which I thought was actually very cool. First of all, I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah.
But you know, her taking chances, you know, and although she knows that's not going to always work out. She knows that she's always going to have support, especially Jimmy. You know, Jimmy, you could tell, just really believes in Stephanie and knows that she'll do good in her career. So that's something that definitely really impressed me about this season. I feel like the more seasons the show does get, the more we will most likely see Stephanie become the star that she's trying to be.
Yeah. So then we get to arguably the best episode of Fuller House yet. By far, my favorite episode, and Tony's as well. We both agree this is the best episode. And that is episode 10, Glazed and Confused. This episode is everything the show needs to be. The entire...
Wait, I think... Sorry to interrupt, but I think it's episode 9.
Yeah, episode 9, actually. Glazed and Confused. We love the episode that much. We don't even know what the episode title is, so that's great. But Glazed and Confused, episode 9... by far the funniest episode of the show yet. There's so many great moments in the show where Stephanie has this pressure to perform on Wake Up USA. She's constantly, you know, she's stressed out about it. She thinks it's not really going to go great. And probably all the worst things that could have happened to her happens in this episode. First of all, we got the entire ensemble back. And before we get into this, we need to talk about a little side thing that's going on with with Jesse and Becky, because it does go into this episode, where Jesse and Becky, they do come back in the Thanksgiving episode, and we find out, as we know, Becky was very clingy towards Tommy, and it was very hinted at that she wanted another baby. But, of course, she's kind of at an age where that's not really going to work. You know, she's too old. It's probably not going to work out that well for her. So they decide that they want to try to adopt a baby. And Jesse at first is kind of against the idea, but she gets him to realize how much he loves kids again. It was a really nice moment in the Thanksgiving episode where we see Jesse, because that's something we really get to see in Fuller House, because he just isn't as close with these kids. And he doesn't have the bond that he did with like a Michelle or Stephanie. He just isn't as close. But to see him bond with Tommy was this really nice, earnest moment that I really did enjoy overall. It reminds us how great John Stamos is interacting with anyone. I think he's just one of those actors, just perfect chemistry with anyone he's interacting with. And that scene with Tickler, I think, was brilliantly done. So you get to episode 10, and they are going to meet the adopter or something like that, the person that's going to help them adopt the baby. She's going to sign the adoption papers. So the pressure's on that, and there's just so much pressure throughout this episode. You know, you got between Stephanie, and then you got that going on, and then we get to basically we get to, you know, she's set to perform, but there's also Police Mom going on, which Fernando is a huge fan of, as well as the adoption lady, the person who's going to sign the paper. She's a huge fan of it. So Jesse says, okay, we'll take a couple minutes. We'll go to the set of Police Mom. But of course, they get to the set of Police Mom. They go into a jail, which is a fake jail, but unfortunately, it is locked. They are locked in the jail for the whole episode, and it is this hilarious turn of events where you don't know what's going to happen there. And this is by far the funniest episode the show's ever done. I'm sure you will agree with me, Tony, that is by far the best episode of the season.
Oh, by far my favorite of the season. And there were definitely plenty of funny episodes. There was barely an episode this season that I found like a misstep. If I have to say very quick with my... If I have to say very quick what my least favorite episode is, it's probably when DJ and Stephanie go to that Greek wedding. That was just okay to me. But this episode, Glazed and Confused, I believe, it was so funny. There are so many funny things that happen in this episode. You know, for what you said to Stephanie, you know, Uncle Jesse, Becky, Fernando, and that adoption lady just being stuck in that fake jail. Which, by the way, the minute they went in, I even said in my head, "Are they gonna get locked?" And then they're all like, "We're locked," and I'm all like, "I knew it." Yep. But it was still very funny how they handled that situation. And not only was that part of the episode very funny, but the plot where the kids get sick because Joey brings these donuts, but these donuts get the kids sick. So DJ and Matt can go on their vacation, and even eventually DJ starts to get sick. But then there's also this thing where because Becky isn't on the talk show with Danny, Kimmy steps in as the co-host, and so many funny things happen. So like, there's so many things to remember from that episode for sure. And as funny as most of the episodes were this season, that episode definitely stands out as like the best of the season, in my opinion.
I'd say the best of the show, actually. Just like having everyone together, it just adds so much to it, and it's a really funny episode overall. And then to top it all off, when they eventually get out of the jail, when they realize that the door was literally right there. There was literally a door right there they could get out of.
Oh my God,
another really fun visual gag that I definitely really enjoyed. Stephanie goes on to perform the song, and literally they run at a time. So she doesn't get to perform the song, but Danny tells her that she can perform the song another time. And then this plot just kind of goes away. They don't talk about it for the rest of the season. I'm not entirely sure why. I think they could have definitely done more with her music career, but this is something the show tends to have a problem with, is that they don't know when to end plots and when to start them. And that's something I think that they definitely did have a problem with this season. Definitely not as much as a problem as season 1, but I'm not really sure why they ended that plot. I thought that Stephanie having this music career was exactly the right direction for her. I think they could have done a lot more with it, and they just didn't decide to. Now I get it that it's just one song, that, you know, it's gonna take a while for her to become a big star, but have her work on other songs, have her collaborate with Jimmy, have her try to get a record deal, have all these things happen. You know, there's so many directions that they could go with this, and for some reason they just kind of abandoned. I thought that was definitely weird, and I think you'll definitely agree with me that it is kind of a misstep in what was a really well done plot, Tony.
Well, actually, I don't think they abandoned these arcs, because that's a good thing about a TV show. You always have more seasons to expand on them. And that's the thing I have to credit this show that I don't think really many people talk about. I think it is actually a very well-balanced show. Like, I don't think, well, besides Steve this season, I don't think really any characters were underused. Like, they had the perfect amount of screen time, in my opinion.
They do stuff with Stephanie, but they could have focused a little bit more on her music career. But they do still stuff with her. They do some really good stuff with her and Jimmy, where we get to the Christmas episode, and Jimmy tells Stephanie that he loves her. And it's this huge moment where Stephanie's trying to figure out. And this I really love, because like we said throughout the entire season, it was a little bit rushed. And I think Stephanie starts to realize that this is all happening so fast. You know, do I really love him? Is this really, you know, the way I want it to go? And she starts to wonder, you know, does she really love him? And does she really want to be with him? And at first, we see that she's not willing to say anything. And we get this incredible scene between DJ and Stephanie that was incredibly deep and actually had some really great emotional layers to it that the show really doesn't have a lot. But when they do it really damn well. And that's where DJ basically tells Stephanie that every single guy that she has a connection with, she pushes away, and she doesn't want to have, you know, any sort of connection with it. Maybe just sex or, you know, something like that. You know, a little connection. She doesn't really want to have a full-on relationship with them. She just wants maybe one date or two dates, or just, you know, a fuck buddy. Obviously, the show's not going to talk about that, but it's definitely implied that that is definitely what she's done and things like that. Yeah. And, you know, I thought it was a really nice moment where Stephanie realizes that this is someone who she actually does really love, and she's kind of scared because she's never really felt this way about anyone. It's just this really great moment, because if you really think about it, unlike DJ, Stephanie never really had that one guy in the show, you know, and that's obviously because she was 13. She never really had, you know, a love interest or anything like that. So this is really the first time she's had a steady boyfriend who really cares for her, who's going to provide for her, who, is very eccentric and kind of out there and definitely not the smartest guy, but really does love her and is willing to do anything for her and will constantly profess his love to her. And she realized in this moment that she does, in fact, want this. It's just this incredible moment that Jodie Sweetin just acted the hell out of when she tells him she loves him and that she's ready to pursue this relationship with him. It's just a really nice moment overall. We'll get more Stephanie in the finale, but just really great stuff between these two. And I think you'll agree with me, Tony, this started off as a very rushed relationship, but in the end ended as something that was one of the highlights of the show. Was probably my favorite relationship in the show, honestly. I loved watching Jimmy and Stephanie interact. I think it was a very unexpected pairing, but is one of the best pairings the show has done so far.
Yeah, and it's true. When they say opposites attract, you know, that saying is actually true, to be honest. Yeah. And that's the interesting thing about the show. Even if it'll have stuff that is flawed, they'll somehow manage to make that flaw work later on. Like it's still a flaw, like it's still there, but I guess they kind of make it up later on to make it maybe not heavily flawed because of just how they handle these stories. Because yeah, that's definitely one thing for sure. Even if I did feel like their relationship was rushed in the beginning, I still felt that connection between those two, and definitely seen it in the second half of the season for sure. I was very happy with how much further they did take the relationship, and then what you said about Stephanie having commitment issues. So for her to think about, do I really love him? Do I want to be in this relationship with him? Because that is something couples in real life would think about. They want to know if they want to be with that person, if they're ready for that person. So I think couples can actually relate to that arc, and I thought how that was explored during the season. Like you said, it was definitely very deep.
That's pretty much everything on Stephanie up to the finale. Now, the only other thing to talk about is the kids, because as you guys know, I was very back and forth with the kids. I love Ramona the second they introduced her. I thought she was great. I thought she had this great energy to her. I thought she was a really fun character. She had this new sense of, this personality that we really didn't have on the show before. I thought she was really great. Max, it took a long time for me to like him. I thought that he was just there to be the Michelle of the show and just shout random catchphrases, and I really didn't like him. And then but eventually I did tend to like him. I thought he grew into a very fun kid overall. And then Jackson, it took so long to like him. I thought he got very cocky, but then eventually I did like him. And this season, I think you'll agree with me, they gave the kids equal time. And that's something that I really loved about this season. This truly was Fuller House, because it wasn't just the DJ Stephanie Kimmy show. They gave the kids equal amount of stuff. And that's something I was very happy about, especially when it comes to Jackson and Ramona. Two people who I think they could have done, they set up in season 1 that I thought were going to be in a relationship. I'm not quite sure why. I just felt like that's really where they were going to put them. Obviously not, because now that'd be weird. But Ramona, these two have a lot more interaction this season, and it's all the better for it. I mean, they work really well together. I don't know the actors' names, but they work really well together, and I think they bond in a way that we haven't really seen on the show, and especially with Jackson's, attraction for Lola, because we know that him and Lola kissed at the end of the first season, and immediately he has this huge attraction to her. He wants to do whatever he can to get with her. And just like DJ and Matt or Stephanie and Jimmy, she does try to push him away at first, but eventually he does come on to her and they do get together. And this one wasn't as rushed. This one, I don't think it was till episode 5 till they got together. And I think that made a little bit more sense for them to do that, definitely. I like that they waited a little bit to get these two together. I thought that the dynamic between Ramona and Jackson worked really well in that regard. Jackson and Ramona got closer from this. I really enjoyed it. I liked that they really were acting like brother and sister. And I think you agree with me, Tony, that their relationship especially really did add a lot.
It's kind of funny because with the first episode of season 1, I didn't really like any of these kids. Like, I'm all like, oh man, I really hope I don't despise these kids. Then funny enough, I think like around episode 2 or 3, I actually started to really like, well, at least 2 out of 3 of them. Like, I actually really liked Max and Ramona. Jackson, I thought he was fine, but out of all the kids, he was the one I didn't really care for all that much. It wasn't really until like the last few episodes of season 1 where I actually started to get more on board with Jackson. But no, with this season, I actually really like all of the kids. I actually really like Jackson way more here. Max, I like him probably just as much, if not more, here in the season. The same thing does go for Ramona. And like I said, back to where I said about this is a very well balanced show. You're not only balancing the adult side of the stories, but you're balancing the kids. And I think it's kind of nice when you can get this perspective of what the adults are going through and what the kids are going through. Jackson, Ramona, I think they look at each other as brothers and sisters at this point, as a brother and a sister at this point, because they didn't really get along with each other, but it's nice to see that these two have grown to really appreciate one another. And yeah, the whole thing with Jackson and Lola, it wasn't really that rush. I would say, unlike with the other plots dealing with the adults particularly, they actually did take their time, because you also had season 1. So you had like season 1, the second half of it to do it, and then you had the first half of season 2 to do it.
Season 1, it definitely took me a while to like all the kids. But season 2, there's this whole other layer to the kids that just felt more organic than even I think the original show did. As good as the original show was, it did sometimes come across really cheesy. And I feel like in this show, they just were regular kids. Like, they didn't try to make them, you know, these huge stars. And that's something I do like about this. And especially Max. Max is a lot more, not toned down, but he's just found his own character, you can tell. I think the actor in general, just a better actor now. You know, he's a little bit older. He knows more of what he's doing. He's more confident. They've ditched his catchphrase, which I am so happy about. That holy jalupas thing he said every episode, I never found that funny. I thought it was dumb. I thought it was just a stupid way to get a catchphrase, and I'm glad that they didn't try to give them catchphrases. You know, Max is very sassy. He's a lot of fun to watch. He has this relationship with CJ's sister, I think. Yeah, CJ's sister. And it's a lot of fun to watch, definitely. And then Ramona this season has a brief arc with Popko, who, not the best character in the world, really. Popko is very cocky. He's someone who's extremely into girls, and he thinks that every girl wants him. He thinks every girl, you know, just can't get it. Yeah, everyone wants a taste of you know, Popko. And Ramona starts to fall for him because she's never had her first kiss before, and he's there. She decides to kiss him, and obviously she wants more. You know, she wants more of a relationship. And I thought it was a really well done, realistic arc that they handled really, really well. And I thought it gave Ramona really good stuff to do. They don't really focus on it a ton this season, but they gave her enough stuff that I was happy about it. And I thought overall what they did with the kids was really well done. Jackson and Lola, like I said, they do end up together, which I thought was definitely really sweet. I enjoyed that. I thought their stuff was really good. And overall, I just really thought the kids, I believed more with them. You know, I liked them more. I liked watching them more. And season 1 definitely did take away from it. Season 2, they just feel like they're now a part of the cast, and it feels a lot more natural, like when they're interacting with each other. I think they did that a lot better this season than they did in season 1. They even got a little bit more into, you know, their lives, you know, the people they interact with. Like, there's this really great episode where Max is entering this this contest because the entire season we're teasing the science thing that he's doing, and it becomes a show, basically, because his dad is like this rich guy who thinks his child is like the best thing in the world, and it becomes like this show, basically, where DJ's trying to make it more showy and things like that. And, you know, Max doesn't really contribute a lot to it. And it was just a really nice storyline. They did a lot more with the kids, and in general, I thought it just worked a lot better. So I definitely really did enjoy that, and I thought that definitely was really well done. Before we get to the finale, there's a couple other things that we're going to talk about. First of all, let's talk about the directing of the season, which I feel was a lot more consistent. I feel like season 1 was a lot of try stuff out season, like see what works, see, you know, what we can do with this and that. And this season, I think they saw what everyone liked for the most part. You know, there's always that thing on Netflix where they ask you to comment what you like and didn't like about this show. So I think they've actually been reading that and listening to what people said. And you can tell this season they know more of what they want to be. It just felt a lot more confident. There was a really great balance, I think, of comedy and even some emotional moments in there. Like we said, there was one in the 12th episode. There was a really good one in the finale that we'll definitely get into. But I thought they definitely did a really good blend of the comedy and drama and things like that. But overall, Tony, what do you think of the directing this season?
The directing with this season, I thought it's honestly been pretty solid. In terms of direction, I never really had a problem with the show. I always thought season 1 was very well directed. I can understand where you're coming from with the whole, let's just try this, let's just try that. Like, I can agree they're kind of experimenting with last season because they want to see what worked and didn't work. I did think season 1 was well directed, but I will definitely say that season 2, as far as direction goes, is just slightly more smooth, if that makes sense.
And that's definitely true with the writing. I think we pretty much said all we need to say about the writing. I think even the cameos this season, even though some of them didn't really do a ton, they felt a lot more organic. The best one by far being from Dwayne. Oh my God, the direction they took Dwayne this season, what he ended up doing, and the way they utilized him was actually really cool the way they did that. It was so cool to see that character again and actually have him have genuine lines, not just say whatever all the time. I thought it was definitely really fun. Definitely really fun cameo. And we should also talk about the fact that Joey comes back this season. but he has a wife and 4 kids, and then they become about as relevant as Danny's wife does.
Very, very cool to see Dwayne. That was something that just put an instant smile on my face. Sometimes you do wonder with these characters, especially the characters that come and go in Full House. You always wonder how they are when they're older. Obviously, we know how Gia is older. We know how Nelson is older, and it was cool to see what Dwayne is like older and seeing that he actually spoke more in just one episode than he did for the entire Full House series. So that, as well as other cameos, I thought they were definitely a breath of fresh air for the season.
Joey comes back with a wife, as we said, and I thought that was kind of funny the way they did that. But then she kind of just goes away, just like Danny's wife. I don't know what this show is with getting these guys' wives and then just not talking about them. I guess it's just a thing they like to do. There was a lot more music this season, which I very much appreciate because of Stephanie's music career, and I thought they used that really well, definitely. Just in general, I thought everything worked really, really well. My only issue, like I said, with season 2 is that some plots, I think, could have gone on a bit longer. A lot of the plots were quite rushed, like Matt and DJ, like Stephanie and Jimmy. But in the end, it kind of became a good thing. I think they did a pretty good job with that. There were definitely some pacing issues with some of the episodes, definitely. There were not every joke hits, definitely. There are definitely going to be some jokes that hit and some jokes that don't. There was one particular joke with Fernando in episode 2 that I just found a little bit gratuitous and was just kind of silly and didn't really go with the rest of the humor they had from him. Involved him in a bathrobe, and I thought it was just kind of silly what they end up doing with that. I think you'll definitely agree with me with that. But I thought that the humor was more consistent overall, and in general, I definitely really did love this season. But now we're going to jump into the finale, guys. So if you guys haven't seen the finale of Fuller House, do not watch the rest of this review, because there's quite a lot of stuff that happens in it. It's a pretty lengthy finale. There's a lot of stuff that happens, and we're just going to jump right into it. So as we know, we're going to talk about every arc. The big thing going on is that Matt is coming back from India, so DJ is waiting for him to come back. It's also the New Year's episode, and Steve has made the decision to propose to CJ because he's really starting to fall for CJ. He has this genuine connection to her, and you can tell that it's more that he's starting to fall in love with DJ again, but he's kind of using that, masking it for CJ, which I thought was quite interesting. So he plans on proposing to her, but he can't write a proposal because he doesn't know what else to say. So he has DJ write it for him, and he can't remember the proposal. So literally CJ at first thinks that Steve is trying to cheat on her with DJ, which I thought that was a little bit too much. I didn't really know. That scene kind of came out of nowhere to me. Like, there wasn't really any sense that she thought, oh, maybe he still likes DJ, oh, maybe he still likes CJ. I think you'll agree with me that just kind of came out of nowhere. But that's how that turned out. And then by the end, DJ actually ends up proposing to CJ, literally proposes to her as Steve, and Steve and CJ are now engaged, which I thought was very interesting to see. Matt does come back while this is happening in a very funny scene where he has no idea what's going on because DJ is literally proposing to CJ in that moment. So that was definitely pretty funny. And Matt goes to DJ, and you can tell that this relationship, while it is really nice, it doesn't seem like this wedding is really going to take place. I don't think that wedding is going to happen. We'll get into that. But then you have Jimmy and Stephanie, who throughout this episode, Jimmy, now that these two have decided to commit to each other, he wants to have a family. He wants to settle down, have kids, and Stephanie has to come to the difficult realization that, of course, she can't have children. And I was glad that this came back in the forefront because it was a very well done plot twist that was very unexpected. That was really, really dark for the show that they really didn't talk about again. I'm glad that they talked about it because, yeah, that should still be on our mind. And I'm glad they brought that up again. They decide that no matter what happens, that they're going to stay together, and I really liked it overall. I was worried that they were going to break these two up, and I was happy that they didn't because I really loved seeing them as well. And I'm pretty sure Jimmy's going to be a main character next season. I could definitely see that happening. We also have stuff going on with Ramona, where Ramona is trying to figure out if she wants to kiss Popcorn or not, while Jackson and Lola are, of course, planning on kissing for New Year's. And Max wants to join them because DJ said that he could join them and everything. And they try to trick him into believing that it's New Year's at 9 o'clock, which I thought was pretty funny the way that turned out. And Rose is basically breaks the news to him that they've played a prank. So he goes full on Rusty and locks them into their room. So I thought that was a pretty funny scene overall, the way that that was done. And in the end, neither Pablo and Ramona do in fact kiss in the end, which I thought was a nice moment. And what I liked about it is that I didn't like Pablo in the beginning, but by the end of this episode, he's actually willing to change and turn himself around and actually wants to evolve into someone that can have a genuine relationship. It's just this really great realization that I didn't really expect for someone like Pablo, but they actually did a good job of making him something more. It was a pretty good revelation for Pablo that I definitely really did enjoy. And then the only other thing going on is that Jesse and Becky do decide that they're going to adopt a baby. We see that there's this very funny thing going on with Jesse, Joey, and Danny, where he's trying to figure out who's going to be the godfather. He chooses Joey. Danny gets really pissed, and they get into this fight where they basically start calling at each other for all these different flaws that they have, how Danny doesn't really like Forever. Jesse doesn't really like Wake Up USA, and none of them really like Mr. Woodchuck, which I thought was pretty funny. They do bring back Mr. Woodchuck back. Mr. Woodchuck possibly died in this episode. They decide that they're just going to, pick each other, and they have the baby and everything, which the baby, definitely one of the more heart-wrenching moments because they decide to name the baby Pamela, and I'm not going to lie, I thought I almost shed a tear. I thought that was really, really, really touching overall. It just really brings the show full circle. And then by the end of the episode, we see DJ, Stephanie, Kimmy. They're talking about their year, and they're thinking, okay, so it's okay that Steve is engaged to CJ because she was going to choose Matt. And we realized that DJ was actually going to choose Steve. And it's this big thing where you realize that that's actually who he's going to choose. And we end the season where DJ, she's confident, but she's kind of unsure if this wedding is actually going to happen. And that's pretty much everything that happened in the finale. And Tony, I know there was a lot to process, but what did you think of everything that happened in the finale overall?
Popco is a character that I really did not care about. I thought he was quite annoying. But then ironically, you start to actually maybe kind of warm up to him. We'll see how season 3 goes, however, but by the end, I was like, okay, I can see where this is going, and the whole thing where Ramona and him do have that New Year's kiss, that was pretty sweet as well. The scene with Danny, Joey, and Jesse having their little argument was so great, and then the whole thing like with DJ, Matt, and Steve, DJ having was going to go for Steve until what happened with CJ, which was actually really funny, especially when Matt walks in. That had me dying right there. They make it a little too obvious with that plot, and that's where I do kind of go back earlier with I hope they don't really drag it on because it will get tiring after a while. I know eventually Steve and DJ are going to be together. They have this huge history and Full House. How are you not going to get them together? Besides the obvious, she may be still liking Steve or not. I did think everything came to a nice close and a nice way to set up of what we could possibly see in season 3.
This wedding probably, like we said, is not going to happen. I'm definitely interested in seeing really where that's going to go, if that's going to happen. I'm happy that Jimmy and Stephanie stayed together because I want to see them more together. And I just want to see more character interactions because that's something the season did really well, is that we had characters interact that really hadn't interacted before. Like, I'm pretty sure most of the family did not interact with Fernando as much as they did this season, which was really fun to watch. The other thing I forgot to say is that I do like that the alumni, like the original cast, I like that they were kind of pushed to the back because it is their own show. They focused more on the show overall. They tried to make it, a spinoff, and they didn't try to make this, Full House, the reunion. They only did that when they needed to. It was very organic. I'm not sure why the family wasn't in the Christmas episode. It was kind of strange that they were.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, that was definitely strange. I don't know why they did that because, it's Christmas. Why would you come for New Year's and not Christmas? Just kind of strange. As you guys know, I really did love this season overall. I thought this was a really, really great season, a really great improvement over season 1 that was just that much funnier. Had great character moments, had some really good dramatic stuff in there. I'm going to give Fuller House Season 2 a 4.5 out of 5 or an A-.
I would give Fuller House Season 2 a 4 out of 5 or a B+. So I do think it is a step above season 1. It was definitely more consistent with the laughs. It was a little bit better written. And best of all, my biggest issue with season 1 that I'm glad that they fixed, it's a lot more kid-friendly. Yeah. Like, sure, you still do have your adult humor and all of that. And it works once in a while when they did do that. But I am definitely glad that it was more family-friendly this time around.
Of course, thank you, Tony, for being here for this review. Very much appreciate it.
Oh, anytime, man. Thank you for having me on. It was great watching this season with you, and it was great reviewing this season with you.
But either ways, guys, let me know what you thought of Fuller House Season 2. Please check out Tony's channel. I will definitely leave a link for his channel down below. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for a movie review, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.
Tiger power!
Tiger power!